Hi everyone, and welcome to the Elephant in the Room. My name is Joe Kobuthi. Today I'm in conversation with Andréas Otieno. Mr. Otieno is a podcaster, an active citizen, and a social justice enthusiast. Welcome, Andre, to the Elephant.
Thank you so much.
I just wanted to kick this conversation. You've been involved in a lot of youth organizing, engaging the youth, particularly on matters politics, governance in this country. And, in particularly after 2024, you, you've been around the country,
Yes.
talking to young people, engaging with them. And I think one of the things that is still is a kind of Pandora's question
Yes.
is why do the youth come out in large numbers?
That is in 2024.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think for a very long time, the young people had never really known the budget cycle, the process, what it takes before we see a CAS with a briefcase and all those optics that goes around budget reading. People did not know what process it takes before it gets there. Personally, some of these things I learned when I got into this space to understand the budget cycle. So a number of them do not know that the people they elect in parliament actually make decisions on how much each product that they are using should be taxed. So it was a moment of civic consciousness. And remember, this is coming 4 years after COVID, because COVID really made us really amplify the use of leverage on digital innovation to access information, to reach out to each other and communicate. So the use of internet actually had raised a lot of awareness around that time. If it was candle, it would blow and all those things. So when now somebody decided to analyze the budget and let the young people, let everyone know that these are the changes that are going to take place, and the people we voted for are actually going to vote on this budget. So, of course, the opposition and government are doing their own thing as usual, but now the conversation is not about what is happening in parliament. The conversation is what are other people saying about this very bill on TikTok, on Facebook, on IG, and all that. So it aroused some level of awareness that actually the budget cycle, our voice, which is represented through the people we have elected, can actually alter or balance some of the things in a way that is favorable to us. And now we had all eyes on the members of parliament, that we, the people, have said we do not want that bill to be passed. Now we are here to watch you see. We want to see you represent our voices. And when those who voted yes for the bill and those who voted no for the bill, every person felt their interests were served, either rightfully so or not. So if your interests were violated, of course, you are more angered. If your interests were served, but you still joined the other young people. So largely, it was form of a clout. We've been to counties post the Gen Z protests, and I can tell you that in a room of 50 young people, you can find maybe 10 really understood the content of the bill, and therefore they went to the streets to inform that I'm going to the streets because a diaper is going to cost this more because this guy has decided, or these people have decided to add a tax to it. The renovations in the State House, parliamentarians and the allowances and all those things. All these things were brought to the awareness of young people, and now they watch and they saw the people they elected to vote for them betray them live on camera. So it roused some level of anger. But again, it's a cloud. It's something about, the fear of missing out at some point. It's cool to be in the streets. It's cool to, show that you're patriotic and everything, carry the flag and go to the streets, do your recording there. But in the process, the informations are getting them. So even if you went to the street without knowing why you went to the street, eventually you will understand what are young people saying, because a lot of them were being interviewed. So I felt young people went to the street because we all felt the weight of the cost of living, and there was an awareness that something can actually be done before we bear this burden. And the vote was just about to happen on the bill at a time when we are feeling that the cost of living is not bearable. Remember, that was the narrative also of the opposition at that time, that the cost of living has gone high. We are just from the streets to Metoka Kuva, sufurias in our heads, and now we are in parliament. So people knew actually the cost of living, somebody's running that narrative that the cost of living is high, whether you're feeling it or not. But now you've actually seen that it's gonna be even worse if this bill passes. So awareness was created and young people got the needed anger to actually demand for accountability and the right presentation.
But I mean, the question for me is why now? You know, in particular because historically speaking, even if you go as far back as 2013, we used to have the Machozi Mondays, both during Uhuru Kenyatta's tenure as president, and we had a lot of cost of living conversations. I think what people are eager to understand, what were the particular drivers that led a whole generation, not just a whole generation, but a whole, really the whole country, finally to just say enough is enough, and cause a level of disruption to voice out their grievances, to say what are the particular internal drivers that led to that.
If you look at it, you realize that between 2013 to 2024, that's a whole decade. You realize that. So the youth surge actually had increased because we were 10 years apart. So the young people that were in the era, for instance, of Uhuru Kenyatta in 2013 had actually grown 10 years in their age. These are people who are more tech savvy. So the youth surge, I can say, really contributed largely to this because we are having many young people who have a lot of access to internet, to TikTok. You know, TikTok had not been a thing back then, but now we were having people even telling the young people to translate the bill in their vernacular. So even a young man in let's say Uasin Gishu somewhere, in Elgeyo Marakwet somewhere, can actually access a video on TikTok and see that this is the national conversation that is happening. The young people are having these conversations. That is before, because I remember the very first ever video that was calling the young people, or people actually, to go out in the streets was, I saw Boni Mwangi's video saying, calling Tom Mboya, I don't know, Achieng Oneko, those legends, and saying, if they were alive today, they would stop what will happen here tomorrow or on Tuesday, okay? So I want all Kenyans to go out there on Tuesday. Then it started sparking conversation. What's actually going to happen in Parliament? That has never been done before. No one had ever actually created content around the budget cycle and presented it to the young people. So we just got to a time, I can say a tipping point, where we started having people, young wakilis, like young lawyers who can interpret some things like those bills. We have people in the CSO space like us who can go and create content and let the people know that tomorrow or on Tuesday, this is what is going to be passed. And after this bill is passed, you are not going to buy unga at this amount. You're going to buy it at this price because these guys have done ABCD. So it was just a moment, a tipping point. But I believe that the youth surge in this country sometimes is underestimated because we have a very young population. So that one, I think it's just erupted. After 10 years, we've been there. There are younger people who are youth by the time even in 2013, and they also joined this movement. So it was that moment of awareness. It just tipped.
One of the things also that is coming up, people are beginning to understand, trying to understand, is what people are now calling colloquially Gen Z, the Gen Z movement, though it's much more broader to other generations, but it's leadership structure.
Yes.
When Gen Z say they are fearless, they're tribeless, and they are partyless, many people are trying to understand what exactly does that mean. So with interactions across the country, with Gen Zs. In your mind, what does that mean for them, and what kind of leadership structures are emerging from this youth organizing that we are seeing across?
You know, whenever we are talking about the Gen Z movement, people view Gen Z movement as any other movement, like a political party, like Orange Democratic Movement, that has interest in leadership and shares and whatever it is that it takes to make up a government. People think of Gen Z as a lobby group that wants to get something just for them from that very government, you know. But when Gen Z say that they're leaderless, they are they're partyless, they're tribeless. The tribeless point, maybe we touch on that later. That's where the problem was. But Gen Z is a movement that adapts to the situation. It's like any movement. This movement adapt to the situations. They are for the moment. So the Gen Z problem was not a question of inclusion. That was not why they went to the streets. The Gen Z revolt was not about the issue around. There was issue about inclusion or what is there for them. You know, so it's not what is there for them; it's what's there for the people, for Kenya. You know, because when you were to be when you came to us and asked us to vote for you, there are things we told these young people that are going to happen. And years later, 2 years, 3 years later, 4 years later, we realized these things do not happen. So they got tired. So we are at a point where there's both frustration, but there's also a new level of awakening. So they will seize the moment and it will happen. But the Gen Zs do not need leaders. The Gen Zs do not need anybody to sit on the table, because if you read the placards that the young people had in the streets, they told you everything they wanted. See, they were talking about the sanitary towels, for instance, going up. They were talking about the cost, the price of wunga, for instance. They were talking about things that make sense to them. Then there are no opportunities for them. You keep saying you're talking to Meta. Meta is going to provide, I don't know what. You're talking about the digital economy and how you want to expand it. But the very young people do not feel it on the ground. So when we do not see a vision where the jobs that you're talking about will be created, when we feel the weight of living, and then the people that were voted in to represent their voices betray them. Because when those millions went to the streets, I think the honorable thing that the politicians ought to have done would have been to halt that process until they listened to the young people. But they went ahead and they still voted when children were being shot outside there. So this rage, it is not because to stop that rage, you have to assemble a few Gen Zs and give them position, then that stops. No, Gen Zs do not work like that. These are not people who have been colonized along ethnic lines, you know. So they do not think along the ethnic lines, though that politicians know what to do to make that happen. But at that time, and even as at now, Gen Zs just want you to follow the Constitution, do the right thing. We won't be in the streets. They won't be in the streets. Just follow the Constitution.
So 2024 happened, and we're 1 year to elections, right? And to my mind, and at least from my own public reading of society, little has been done to address what 2024, the grievances of younger generation in 2024. So now we are moving to a space where the argument was that Gen Zs are pathetic, younger generations are pathetic towards voting. And now, a month, 2 months down the road, we are, a couple of weeks actually, we've just seen the Tukokadi campaign. So how do you connect, just the surge of younger people taking their votes in 2024?
So I mentioned that movements adapt to the moment. Movements adapt to the situation at that time. in 2024, when the young people went to the streets, we went to the streets. That moment, the issue was the burden of taxes. And that's why they named our president Zakayo, the tax collector, So the issue was the tax, heavy taxes. And that is the one thing they wanted to be lowered. But again, you realize that before the Gen Z protests, there was a culture of show off among the political elite, showing us the watches and what it costs, the shoes, We saw videos or photos of government officials flying first class and stuff like that. So I think that stopped at some point because it created that awareness to the leaders that these things you do, we are seeing them. And our lives does not reflect what you're flashing out there. Yet you are our representatives. You are supposed to represent our interests. So that stopped at some point. I know I hardly see nowadays, most politicians who are online all the time on Facebook Reels, you see them with, walking or just entering the office and you showed the opulence and gold and what is there, I don't see it a lot. So one of the achievements of the movements that I would say is that it roused an awareness among the young people that what you say, what you do, these people will hold you accountable. Because they started things with receipts. Getting your phone number would not be difficult. And they put it out there. Numbers of police officers, CSS, remember Salimia Mbunge wako, that time. So they used to do that. And it created awareness that the generation you're dealing with is a generation that keeps receipts. So you have to be very cautious. But unfortunately, most of the things that these young people protested against were later implemented silently, without them knowing that it was actually implemented. But the reason why this happened was opposition decided to sanitize the government, or I would say the move by the opposition somehow silenced the voice of the Gen Zs.
Wow. So then, I mean, you're saying, this movement is adapting to the moment.
Yes.
But what's the moment? I think everybody is wondering, yes, what's this moment?
This moment is, after the handshake,
between
it silenced the voice of the Gen Zs, because the opposition at that time, when the young people were in the streets, were the voice of the young people. You saw the MPs, Akina Mabona, crying, our children are being killed outside there. You cannot continue with these proceedings that our children are being killed outside there. You saw people like Sifuna would go out there and protest. Why are you shooting at these young people? Yeah. So that was the voice of the Gen Z in the house. But when the handshake happened and the agenda shifted from now addressing the issues that were being addressed in that were to be addressed in the finance bill to impeaching Rigiji. And from there, we were going to AUC. Before we realized it is now broad-based and we have a few CS from both divides. And all of a sudden, everyone is speaking the same voice. Now, you realize when that happened, I would attack the millennial here, and unapologetically so. There is the animal called the millennial. The millennial has been ethnically colonized to believe that if someone from my village is in government, it doesn't matter whether CBC is making sense or not, whether we have fuel shortage or not, whether I don't have electricity or not, it doesn't matter. We are now in government, and therefore, the person, the man with the knife and the meat who is given our man the meat is the king. And therefore, there's nothing you can say about it. I belong to a number of WhatsApp groups from my region, where I come from, because I'm very active and I'm very deliberate about the politics of my county. The conversation shifted immediately. And then the Gen Zs now, who did not dance to the tune or to the old narrative that if Modoak or our people is in government, then it means we are in government and therefore there's nothing wrong with this government. The Gen Zs were left, the people who stood the ground were left outside without knowing what to do. They kept championing for what they were championing for. But the narrative was now shifted such that today in this country, if you're talking about the Gen Zs, there are people who look at them as another tribe altogether that has its own interest that does not serve our interest. Because for us now, we are in the broad-based and things are working. Therefore, the Gen Zs need to now turn it down. We are not with you. So the reason why Gen Zs cannot join the government is because even if you take one of them, the narratives that have been indoctrinated, the culture, the ethnic culture that has been indoctrinated into the millennials going down, you cannot compare it with how maybe the Gen Zs are. For them, independent-minded. Like my baby brother, I don't even know if he knows about ODM or something like that and how big it is in my region. I don't think he understands that. That is not somebody that you'd sway that because we come from Uganda, for instance, if you give Opio Wandai the CS, then we are in government. He can't feel that. Personally, if I was not as active as I am, I would feel we are in government. And many people now feel that they are in government. Whether they have the proximity to that power or not, it doesn't matter. What matters is, if one day comes home, can he go to a funeral and give young people some 100, 200 shillings? Yes. Can he drop by the chopper? Yes. The chopper landing in the village is a big deal. And so things are working.
So if your argument is correct and saying that younger generations are making a kind of political departure from what older generations were used to vis-a-vis Kenyan political life, what's the outlook for one, to Kokadi, but then two, next year's elections, precisely because if IBC numbers are to be believed, Gen Zs won't make the majority of that voting bloc. They'll be significant, but not majority of that voting bloc. So what does that mean? What does that mean for 2027?
2027 is, for me, I call it will be a rehearsal of what change would look like. It will be a test to what that change would look like. Because personally, I think the politician, through their understanding of their game, has placed the millennials where they're supposed to be. And when we went to Migori, for instance, in 2024, the tone and the people that met us in Migori are not the same people we met in 2025. In 2025, it's two-term, and we are not even having conversation about that. It is two-term, and we are in government, and there will be a direction. I know they were waiting for direction from Raila. Oburu is now struggling to get them direction. Sifuna is also now in their own way. But I know that the young people, they are waiting for the direction, but singing the two-term choir. Because we go back to the millennial animal, the animal called the millennial. These are people who believe that we have what we call the ethnic kingpin, who reasons and makes the decisions for us. And we believe that their decisions are the right decisions. Yeah. So I look at it from a point of the Tukokadi moment is an attempt of the movement to respond to the claims that they are not registering as voters. And I love that now it is taking momentum. But politicians are also doing something to it. They are making that narrative not be unique to the Gen Zs. So hata mimi CS wa ABCD niko kadi, mimi MP wa wapi niko kadi. So they're trying to water that movement down so that it doesn't look unique to the Gen Zs, because there's the fear in those numbers. If they mobilize like they mobilize to go to the streets and register in those large numbers, it's going to be a threat to the political elite. And lastly, I would just say, and this is also like a message to the Gen Zs, voting process is no joke. I queue for more than 4 hours to elect somebody in office. I travel to Kenya to go and vote. So I use money to travel. I still get there, 4 a.m., I'm in the queue. You'll vote at 11 or 10. So these are some of the realities they need to know. That is much more sacrifice. That when you see some of us really bitter when our elected members make decisions that do not reflect our views, I'm not saying that they would listen to everybody's view and agree with them, but sometimes when you see clearly this is not the view of the people or what these people would feel, then it would be like, okay, they get so angry. So for me, I think 2027, can we? It's okay? All right. So I think that 2027 would be a rehearsal of what change would look like. It will be a moment to see the numbers. You know, we are talking about the numbers, but we want to see how will these numbers turn up. And that pattern will inform the strategy that the next generation of change makers has to use or has to employ for them to get the best out of these people. But I don't think a lot will change in 2027, because I've seen the political mobilization that has taken place, and I feel the millennials would still have the larger numbers. And millennials have a lot of attachment to the vote than the Gen Z. Yeah.
I think, Andres, a very good place to end this conversation.
All right.
Thank you so much for your time here at the Elephant.
Thank you.
Asante sana.
Asante.